And Mary said, My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit has rejoiced in God my Saviour, for he has regarded the lowly state of his maidservant. For behold, henceforth all generations will call me blessed, for he who is mighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name, and his mercy is on those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm, he has scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts. He has put down the mighty from their thrones, and exalted the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent away empty. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, as he spoke to our fathers, to Abraham, and to his seed forever.
When I think of Mary, I think of two different times in her life. And the first one is when she gave birth to Jesus. And I can remember being a new mom, and when they first hand you the baby, first hand you your newborn, and how exciting and scared that you are. And so I can imagine she had a lot of those same feelings as a new mom. And then the other time that I think about her in her life would be when she was at the foot of the cross when Jesus was crucified. And that is such a difference from the joy that she experienced in the beginning. I can't imagine as a mom being there to lose your child. And so I think that that's just something that no mom should ever have to experience. And so when I think of her, I think of those two very different times in her life. The joy she would have experienced, that we all experience when we are handed our newborns. And then the one thing that I hope I would never know, and that is the loss of a child. So when I think of her, I think of those two very different times in her life.
When I think about Mary, I think she must have been a very brave girl. She took on possible ridicule and divorce without batting an eye. And I wonder how many times in that first trimester she actually wondered, did I really talk to that angel? God gave her experiences she needed. She had her cousin recognize her unborn baby as the Lord. Her fiance had an experience with the angel, so that helped. Hopefully he didn't tell his mother about all that. She was very brave. She rode a donkey, camping along the way at 9 months pregnant, just to arrive in a strange city to give birth to her baby in a barn, with no one but her newlywed husband to help her. Wow. She must have been a really amazing kid. She's the one who taught Jesus how to love. She taught Jesus about patience. And she's the one who taught him about forgiveness.
So, in thinking about Jesus and Mary, Joseph, the angel, and the birth, if I was Mary, I feel like I would be very overwhelmed by it all. First being approached by an angel to me would be startling. And then to be told that I'm going to have a child, and that child is going to become the most important thing, the king that's going to save the people, I think it would be a very overwhelming thing. And looking at my own children and wondering what they're going to become as adults, I can't imagine Mary looking down at that baby and thinking all that lies ahead of him and the challenges that are ahead of him, and kind of knowing what's going to happen in the end. I think the whole experience would be, again, overwhelming, joy-filled, but also knowing the challenges that he's going to have to go through, and wanting to protect your baby, but knowing that he's gonna do good things and save people. And her faith is another thing that amazes me, is that she knows it's an amazing thing. So it's an amazing story.
When I think about Mary, I think about what the Bible tells us is that she was engaged to be married. And I think about that special time in my life and how we were busily making plans about what our life might look like, where we might live, what we might do, how many children we might have, and all of those things. And I know that our society today is definitely different than that Mary lived in, but I can only imagine that she still had those hopes and dreams of what her life might look like. And then all before that could even happen, the angel appeared to her and changed the trajectory of where she was going in her life, or where she thought she was going. And so it makes me wonder, it makes me think about the plans that we make, and how sometimes when our plans get uprooted and they get flipped upside down, and it seems like the worst thing that could possibly happen, and then you look at the situation, I'm sure at the time she thought it was pretty bad, pretty scary, pretty terrifying. This is not what I had planned. This is not what I was doing next. And imagine look at what she did. She gave birth to the Savior of the world. And so it sort of made me pause for a minute and think about when we have disappointments and when things don't go our way, how sometimes those are the blessings hidden in those moments that really can define us. So even though most people might have looked at Mary at that time and thought, yeah, I don't want to be her, I'm just so thankful that she obeyed and she was obedient to what God tasked her with.
So when I think about Mary from a mother's perspective, and how she must have felt and how I would feel, I can't help but think about how old she was. And I have a daughter who's close to the age that Mary was, and I know that culturally times were different then. So she was already betrothed to be married, so having a family wasn't too far in the future for her anyways. So but the fact that she had this calling on her life to be the mother of Jesus, and her response was, I am the Lord's servant, may everything you have said about me come true. And that was it. Like, she didn't refuse God. She didn't say, there's no way I can do this. I'm too young. I've never been a mom before. I don't know what I'm doing. This will mess up my marriage with Joseph. This might hurt my family. She didn't give any excuses or any reasons as to why she couldn't do that. She just said, yes, Lord, here I am. And I think that shows how much trust she had in God. I know for myself as a mom, there are oftentimes, that I try to control every part of my kids' lives because I think that I know what's best for them. And I always am reminded, God reminds me, that it's because I have a lack of trust in Him. And this teenage girl who has not experienced a tremendous amount of life already has given her complete trust to Him, and is willing to be the mother of Jesus, and she trusts God enough to know that He is going to work everything out for her. It's just an amazing reminder to me that as a mom, I need to trust God more with my kids. I need to trust God more with my family. Even when things seem uncertain, even when times are scary, I know that I can trust God and lean on Him, and that He will lead, guide, and protect us just as He did with Mary.
When I think of the angel and Mary and Joseph and the birth of Jesus, I think how I know personally how honored I was and how blessed I felt to be chosen to be Sydney and Lindsay's mom. And I can't even imagine the honor that Mary felt being chosen to be Jesus's mom. And I know that love that I felt with the girls when I first held them and knew that how perfect and just you cannot even imagine the love that you're going to feel when you actually have this child. And I imagine it was even more so for Mary, because as the kids get older, sin is, naturally in all children except for Jesus, and so he probably never had to be gotten onto. Or I know that when the girls were teenagers, that it was I always loved them and will always love them regardless of choices and things they do, but I didn't always like them, and I'm sure that Mary never went through that. And it was probably hard when Jesus left and he traveled, and then when he died, because he was so perfect. But I know as a mother the love that you feel when you find out that you are going to have this baby, and then you have this baby. And I can't even imagine her confusion at first, and the probably being scared of what people will think, and then Joseph stepping up and being so kind to marry her, to keep her reputation intact. And then when she did have Jesus, just the joy and the instant love that she had for him. And I also remember when Sydney, my firstborn, was born, that I went down one night and looked in the crib and thought how much I loved her, and it instantly made me think I would die for her, and I would, either of my kids, I would die for them. And then I thought that Mary had to have had no idea what God had planned for Jesus, because she would have died before she ever let Jesus do what he did. And it's one thing to die for your children, but it's another to die for people that don't even deserve the grace that God gives us. But I think it is an amazing story. I think that as everybody anticipated, God could have chosen Jesus just to roll out the red carpet from heaven and ride down on a big horse, but just the sweetest story, that how Jesus came about, and just the miracle with the angel telling Mary, and then his birth in a stable. It's so beautiful, and I think of Christmas and the birth of Jesus just with love. That's what I feel.
Okay, you asked me about the birth of Jesus and how I felt. Each year that I read the story, I have a different perspective, just because there are different times in my life that I'm going through different situations. So before Ada was born, it was very abstract. I didn't realize how tough birth was and what would happen, but I did have all those emotions where I desired this baby, and the baby was loved, and it was magical, and I wanted to have the baby in my arms as soon as possible. I didn't want to wait. But I also have to look at the story and realize that she was young and unwed when she became pregnant, and she most likely didn't have the normal comforts of her society. During that time, women would come together and talk to her about the things that would happen during birth, and they would comfort her during birth, and she never had that luxury. Instead of being in, like a birthing hut with all these grandmothers and mothers surrounding her and comforting her, she was alone in a stable with her husband, who obviously doesn't have experience with birth. And of course, at that time, most women could have died during childbirth, and she had to trust God that it wasn't her time to die. She was only promised the birth of Jesus. She was never promised her life. So after having Ada, having a young child, how hard it is to nurse a child, and how hard it is, when your baby is colicky. The Bible doesn't say Jesus had colic or not. The Bible doesn't say if Jesus was lip or tongue-tied. It just says the birth. It doesn't focus on growing up. And again, all of those things are things that your family are supposed to talk to you about. You're supposed to be nurtured with them for the first 6 weeks to 3 months after birth. You're supposed to have that familiar society embracing you during this time, and she didn't. So I can't imagine how hard it was for her, except when I had my second child. I didn't have family surrounding me during the first few months. It can get very lonely and confusing. You have all these questions, very tired. You just want to do things right, and you're not too sure.
One of the things I've always liked about Mary is in Luke chapter 2, where it says that she treasured these things about Jesus in her heart. I've always taken that to mean that she did not go around her village bragging about him and telling everybody these things. They meant so much to her that she kept them to herself. She knew that how special her son was. She knew he was extraordinary, but she didn't need to go tell everyone about it. And I've always thought that was one of the ways that she's a good example for us.
So my thoughts on the whole Mary thing is it would have to be gut-wrenching for me, from my perspective as a mother, knowing that my son is going to be the Savior, but not knowing exactly how, raising the Son of God, gut-wrenching. And I genuinely don't know if I could be so selfless after loving my child. It's my child. It might be a gift that God has given me, and this is the Savior, but that's still my child. I just don't know that I personally could be that, but I also know that God designed Mary specifically. Like he knew before he designed her specifically to be Jesus's dad or mom, in the same way that he created me to be my children's mom. So, I can sit here and think about this, but it's by design. It's, God specifically created Mary to carry his child. So those are my thoughts. But as a mother, it's gut-wrenching, and I genuinely don't know that I could, I would have the heart to sacrifice, to give up that. I would think that I would try every way I could to see, how could we get out of this? So yeah, that's my take on it.
So Jesus chose Mary to be his mother, a human. He trusted her to take care of him. Even though he was God, he was a baby that needed fed and changed and soothed and kept healthy and safe. And he trusted a mere human to take care of him. He died for her, but I have no doubt she would have taken his place. I would die for any one of my children. And even though I can give my children earthly possessions and desires, I can do everything in my power to make them happy, keep them safe. I cannot offer them salvation. Only Jesus can do that. And that has been my prayer since the day my first child was born and died, and my second child, my third child, and my fourth child. All of my children and my grandchildren. That has been my number one prayer, is for their salvation. And I'm thankful that Jesus trusted us humans to be mothers of our children. Even though we mess up, he forgives us. I failed my children many times, and he forgives us. But the glory and the hope that lives in my soul as a mother is knowing that I did everything in my power to ensure they knew Jesus and that they would be saved. And it is my prayer that they will choose that.
Hey guys, so my thoughts on Mary. As a mother, it's hard for me to imagine Mary not being anxious and faithful all at the same time. I know that you're not supposed to be both of those at the same time, I guess, but as a new mother, as an unwed girl, there's just no way that I could imagine carrying a child and not having any type of doubts or reservations, even though God had literally, said, this is what we're doing, this is how this is going to work. You're going to bring
Christ Savior to the world. So that's crazy to me to think that there's no way that she didn't have any doubts or reservations. But I think that's the cool part about Mary's Christianity and her faithfulness in God. And that's just the story of that in general is just, I think, a real testament of her faith and her love for God, and knowing that she was literally and figuratively carrying a gift from God. It's a beautiful thing as a mom to be able to do that. Of course, we all think that our kids are gifts from God, but I think it's a different feeling. It's a different privilege to be able to do that. So I think how cool that is for her to have been able to do that. But I also realistically believe that there was hard times for her. People in the community, obviously, Joseph, a lot of confusion, a lot of fear, the future and of unknown, and how she was going to protect her child. I think the Christmas story is a beautiful thing, and I'm thankful that we all get to celebrate it every year. And I just think it's great.
When I think about Mary, I think about how much molding happens to the heart of a mother, from finding out you're pregnant to holding the baby to nursing or being up all night bottle feeding, how nothing in your life is ever the same, and how it's the most nurturing relationship that I think we experience here on earth, and how it creates such a desire for being a protector, to want your kids to have the best of things, and also wanting to protect them from any harm. And how even as a mom, when there is a health scare, how you would give anything just to trade the places, and how Mary knew that she was giving birth to the Savior of the world, but she didn't know how. And I think as it became evident what was going to happen, what was going to happen, and to see the agony of her son, just in his, faithfulness, but also his desire for there to be another way, and how I think even among his desire for there to be another way, that Mary's desire to trade places was probably equal, if not greater, just to avoid seeing your child hurt or suffer. And so for her love for God to have been so obedient, and to be able to be the mom in that situation, and also for her story not to have ended there, but for it to have continued, and for her just to be a mother that inspires faith in us all these generations later. Like, what a mom. Just what a mom.